You've seen it happen in 100 tiny ways. Your baby is fussy, squirmy, a little on edge. You pick them up, move into the usual rhythm. The same room, the same light, the same soft voice. The same sequence you didn't even realize had become a sequence. And suddenly, they melt. Their body loosens. Their faces soften. The crying drops. It is almost eerie how fast the calm comes back. And as a parent, that moment can feel both beautiful and confusing. Because what just happened there? Was your baby tired, spoiled, just in the mood? Or did something deeper click the second the routine felt familiar? The same blanket, the same order, the same little ritual before being laid down, the same way you lift them after a diaper change. It can look so small from the outside, but to your baby, it may feel enormous. Because the surprising truth is this: babies often calm down not just because a routine is happening, but because the routine tells their nervous system what comes next. And that changes how we understand what babies are really doing. But that is only the beginning of the story.
A lot of parents are given a simple explanation for this. They hear things like, babies just like habits, or they're getting used to it. Or sometimes the harsher version, don't make them too dependent on routines. And yes, familiarity does matter. Repetition matters. But that explanation is still incomplete. Because when a baby visibly relaxes during a familiar routine, we are not just watching preference. We are often watching predictions. That sounds subtle, but it is a huge difference. Preference says, my baby likes this. Prediction says, my baby's brain and body now have fewer surprises to manage. And this is where most parents get confused. Adults often think of routines as convenience tools, a schedule, a structure, a way to make the day run better. But babies do not experience routine the way adults do. They experience it through sensation, body position, tone of voice, timing, and emotional rhythm. A routine is not just an event to them, it is a pattern of signals. The warm towel after bath, the familiar pause before being picked up, the same words before getting dressed, the same slow sway when moving from one activity to another. When those signals repeat, the world starts to feel less random. And developmental experts describe routines in almost exactly that way. They help babies learn what will happen next, which helps them feel safe and secure. So if your baby relaxes the second a routine feels familiar, that does not mean they are becoming rigid. It may mean they are recognizing a pattern their body has learned to trust. And the science behind that gets even more interesting.
Researchers who study infants do not just look at behavior, they look at regulation. That means how babies move from stress to calm, from activation to settling, from uncertainty to safety. And one of the biggest clues in that process is co-regulation. In plain English, babies are not born with mature self-regulation. They borrow it. First from your arms, your pacing, your tone, your timing, your predictability. A major review on caregiver-infant co-regulation explains that caregivers help organize infant physiology, emotions, and behavior through sensitive, responsive interaction. Feeding, bathing, changing, dressing, holding, these are not just chores. They are regulation events. That matters more than it sounds. Because when a routine becomes familiar, your baby is not just remembering an activity. They may be recognizing a full body map. This is the point where I am lifted. This is the part where the bright stimulation eases. This is the voice that means I am okay. This is the sequence that usually ends in comfort. In other words, familiarity reduces uncertainty. And for a baby, uncertainty is expensive. It costs attention. It costs body tension. It can raise distress even when nothing is technically wrong. A new angle, a sudden transition, a rushed change in pace, those things can feel much bigger in an immature nervous system than they look to us. That is why one baby can cry through a diaper change until the same predictable pattern is repeated over time. Not because the diaper change itself magically became pleasant, but because the whole experience became easier to read. The routine is no longer happening to them in the dark. It is starting to happen in a way their body can anticipate. But the deepest part of this behavior is still ahead.
What researchers and child development experts keep coming back to is this: predictability has emotional power. Notes that routines help babies begin to understand that the world is sensible and organized. And that simple phrase explains so much. Because when a baby relaxes during a familiar routine, what may be calming them is not just sameness, it is order. And order for an infant can feel like safety. Even pediatric guidance around temperament points in the same direction. Healthy Children, from the American Academy of Pediatrics, emphasizes that some children adapt slowly, have lower sensory thresholds, or react more strongly to changes and transitions. And for those children, consistent, predictable routines can help. That means two important things. First, if your baby relaxes when routines feel familiar, that does not mean they are too sensitive. It may simply mean their system notices change intensely. Second, not all babies will show this in the same way. One baby relaxes with the same order of steps. Another relaxes with the same voice and pacing. Another needs the same sensory cues: the dimmer light, the slower hands, the predictable pause before being put down. What looks like a routine preference from the outside may actually be a very specific regulation pattern. And there is one more layer. Research on older children has found links between family routines and emotion regulation, especially in children who may be more stress-sensitive, though that work is not infant-specific and should be interpreted carefully. Still, it supports a broader idea that stable routines can act like an emotional buffer, reducing uncertainty in the environment. So the calming effect of familiarity is not random. It may be your baby's way of saying, I know this pattern. I can stay with this. I do not have to brace as much anymore. And once you see that, daily life starts to look very different.
What does this actually mean for parents? First, it means you can stop reading every moment of resistance as rejection. If your baby fusses during a transition, then relaxes when the routine becomes recognizable, that is not a character flaw. It is not manipulation. It is not your baby winning. It is often a nervous system moving from uncertainty into orientation. That is a much kinder and much more accurate way to see it. Second, it means familiar routines work best when they are emotionally readable, not mechanically perfect. You do not need a military-level schedule. You do not need the exact same minute every day. What matters more is the pattern your baby can recognize. Maybe a certain phrase before being picked up, a slower touch before changing clothes, a predictable order before stroller time, a gentle warning before being laid down. The goal is not control. The goal is signal clarity. And this is where most parents feel relief, because you do not have to do more. Often, you just have to do the next thing in a way that feels more legible to your baby. That said, a gentle caution matters here. If a baby suddenly becomes distressed by a routine they previously tolerated, that can happen for very normal reasons: developmental change, sensory sensitivity, illness, teething, fatigue, a different environment, or a shift in timing. Familiarity helps, but it is not a magic shield. Babies are still human, still growing, still variable. So instead of asking, why is my baby being difficult? Try asking, which part of this routine still feels predictable and which part suddenly feels harder for their body today? That one question can change your whole response. And once that shift happens, the routine stops feeling like a daily battle and starts feeling like a conversation. So here is the reframe that changes everything. A baby who relaxes the second a routine feels familiar is not just liking habits.
They may be telling you in the only language they have that familiarity feels safe enough to soften in. That is a profound thing to witness. Because under the fussing, the tension, the little protests around daily transitions, there is often a baby trying to answer one silent question. Is this moment understandable yet? And when the answer becomes yes, their body says it before words ever could. The shoulders drop, the face releases, the cry loses its edge. The whole nervous system seems to whisper, okay, I know where I am now. That means your routines are doing more than getting you through the day. They are building emotional landmarks, tiny islands of recognition in a world that is still brand new. So if this is your baby, take heart. You are not just repeating yourself. You are helping their world make sense. And sometimes that is exactly why the calm arrives so fast. If this makes you see your baby a little differently, stay close to this channel. And if you have noticed one tiny routine your baby relaxes into instantly, share it in the comments, because those little patterns often reveal more than parents realize. And once you start noticing how familiarity changes a baby's body, the next question becomes even more fascinating. What happens when a baby suddenly resists a routine they used to love?